After herniating a disc, I stopped squatting, and I definitely stopped deadlifting, and I moved through life like a stiff robot, careful to never round my back. But somehow, I would still tweak my back.
Oh, great heavens!
Once I stopped avoiding movement, I progressed my seated good morning from here all the way to here. And I progressed my elephant walks from here all the way to Jefferson curls. Now, there's nothing I do each day that ever causes me pain. Stay tuned for more fast tips. By the time you realize that you are officially in the back hell loop of re-injury after re-injury every 3 to 6 months, you're going to be faced with 2 different directions to take, and this will lead to a very different life from one to the other. The 2 routes you're going to be faced with is the approach of avoidance versus the approach of evidence. This isn't a riddle, this is a little symbolic, but it actually follows suit directly with your approach in training and how your tissue is going to change over the next 1 to 2 years of the choices you make. So let's go through the difference between them. Obviously, I post videos showing that you can strengthen your back, and I jump to things that are triggering and pattern disrupting. I can lift exactly with my spine only, and look, now I'm out of injury. This is a great way to gain attention, and it's an honest story. This is really where I come from. But a lot of people will still be on the avoidance side and not resonating quite with how that's possible for them. So I want to explain the differences between the two, because you can't just jump into, I'm going for it, I'm making my back my strength, I'm gaining evidence. You might end up paralyzed, because the most dangerous exercises you can do for the spine could also be the most potent for healing at the right dosage. So before we dive in and get crazy, avoidance. The reason this will not take you there is no amount of perfection you could find in your movement of a robot to pick up things and put them down, and like the little safety cards in workplaces, make sure to lift with your legs. Don't lift with your back, all that shit. Just makes you look goofy, you look silly. And then you look even more silly when you go and spaz your back anyways trying to pick up your shoe. So avoidance won't get you back there. We understand this if you've ever seen a video of mine. The problem with it is it works today, but in the long term, it's a guaranteed failure. So avoidance protects you today, but leaves you prepared for less over time. I gotta work on my sideways writing. Avoidance is going to work today in the fact that if you're in a flare-up, if you're in an active moment of pain, you're in a period of constant spasms and nerve pain, you have to be careful what positions you get into to not trigger stuff. But like anything you could imagine, if your arm is a little bit sore, well, let's put it in a cast and make sure it's impossible to move. What happens if you stay in that arm cast for 2 years? You know your arm would be a noodle. It would be shriveled up and gone. But mentally, a lot of us put ourselves in a back cast where we do not move our spine through the joints that they are. The spine is not just a stack of 12 bones that are meant to sit perfectly. They do have rotation capabilities because they're supposed to rotate. And I say supposed to simply because when you do it, there's synovial fluid and other micronutrient properties that get to joints. And when you don't move it, your body signals to that area, we don't need as much WD-40 of our own making. We don't need synovial fluid, and we don't need to protect these joints to make it stronger, because it doesn't exist. So your body's listening to you. If you choose avoidance, it will work today, and then it will guarantee you're prepared for less over and over time. So after I herniated my disc, I then re-injured it every 3 months. I would go to something like a deadlift, traditional deadlift, which I herniated my disc on, and I started to see, oh, every time there's pain, so I blamed the movement. Then I would go back to squats, a traditional back squat. Oh, there's SI joint pain, there's radiating issues the next day. So then I go to front squats, slightly better angle, less back. It would be okay for 3 to 6 months. I'm avoiding the force in my spine. And then what happened? I was prepared for less and less over time. So then front squats started to hurt. Then I would do bodyweight slant board squats or really upright goblet squats, really just trying to do quads. And it worked. And then in 3 to 6 months, what happened? I became less prepared and less prepared. And now even just bracing or sitting upright, I couldn't stand without pain. So there's no squat variation left. And it reached a point I couldn't do lunges, squats, couldn't do leg press even. I was getting flare-ups on almost a fucking like pec deck machine. There's no stopping the degradation if you become avoidant. So the difference between avoidance and evidence is that evidence exposes you today. However, it builds you to handle more. So you have the instant gratification success model, and then you have the hard, exposing, tough pill to swallow truth of today that when you stack small incremental changes on, maybe in 2 years you have a different outcome, building tissue directly. So this is an obvious decision you can choose to make. And people, I make this video because people tell you to make this. Be careful, buy a lumbar roll. The same experts that are telling you and producing studies and funding these studies saying avoidance is bad, they are marketing products to tell you to put it in your car, to put it in your chair, to make sure you have back support when you sit in a chair. People are monetizing off you being careful with your spine. Now, I'm not demonizing the product itself. I'm not demonizing the people completely. But it's like, what is the ultimate goal? For you to be reliant on back band-aids and to have to buy constant things, a hip hook or a back lumbar roll or a belt or whatever other thing on the market? Or is the goal that you built your own back brace, you built your own protection slowly over time? You don't need me, low back ability, and you don't need the Chiro, and you don't need the third product that's going to support your spine in whatever weird way. So the two differences, protecting you today, you're guaranteed worse off over time. Or exposes you today, you're guaranteed if you do not go way too fast, you're going to incrementally build to a better place. So what does that look like? In avoidance, you're going to make sure you never get in a bad position. Versus evidence, you're going to go exactly in the bad position. With evidence, you're going to go exactly where you'd be afraid and make it so easy you cannot fail. Adding variance like movement, adding variance like range of motion, it's just more evidence in incremental stacking fashion. Now, I've already shown this machine to the death of me, but it's your first time seeing a video of mine. The back extension is the most direct and scalable way to start building evidence. To be able to hold your own body weight without motion in this back extension iso hold is signaling to the tissue and to your neurology to trust contraction. And if you hold it long enough, after a minute, you're going to get circulation. You're going to get a pump. You're flushing tissue through with muscular vascularity. You're getting a pump of blood you probably haven't gotten in a very long time. And this is healing. This is adaptive. So take whatever quality or property you have become fearful of. Maybe you've learned from your re-injuries that sports are bad. Avoid them. Maybe you learned that barbell lifting is bad. Avoid them. I started to blame these things. I started to realize I keep getting injured in this one lift. Anytime I touch a barbell, therefore the problem must be the barbell. That's not the truth. So second, in avoidance. Avoidance is not progressive, meaning it does not bring you anywhere to higher and higher levels. When you learn about cobras and press-ups, and you begin a ritual of passively putting your spine in extension, because one time early on it gave you relief. It helped your nerve pain localize, or it felt like it helped at the actual root of your disc herniation. This is supposedly supporting the direction of the bulge going back into the spinal column. But once you make this a daily routine like I did every single day doing 20 reps, there's no muscle contraction. I'm not doing a Superman or a back extension iso hold. I'm just passively putting the spine in this yanked position. You start to develop strain on all the bones, on the facet. So me avoiding pain by doing this kind of non-progressive, daily, lifelong relief tool actually degraded me more. And then I started to have sensitivity with extension. And I had SI joint pain right at the base of my spine and glutes. So I couldn't even sit in a chair. Now all of a sudden, other things got worse because of my relief Band-Aid that helped in the beginning. Not progressive. You just stick with that forever and it works less and less. That's called drugs. Second, evidence has to be progressive simply because if you jump into the crazy stuff that I'll show, my step L compared to your step A, and do your body weight rounding and flexion, you might become paralyzed today. Straight up. With the spine you're starting from, I don't know where our starting points are. You got to find your step 1 before you jump into anyone else's step 7. So it has to be progressive. You have to start probably underwhelming amount, like I've shown with the iso holds, and then see how well can you just squeeze, 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 and then gently start the journey of developing trust in range with hinge reps first, moving the flat back just through range of your hips, and then starting to go vertebrae by vertebrae, and then trying to move the head and make it even more intense on the nerves as you go up and down, and then going for strength of reps. Can I get 30? These are tests that you prepare for with the previous over the span of months, years. Has to be progressive. This is just a better philosophical stance to take anything to drastically change in your body. Your spine is the deepest part of your skeleton. It's the core of it, it's the root. It makes sense that it's not going to be a fix for a week and then it's all good. This is reinvesting. So, progressive or not, it's your choice. This is my sales pitch for one side. Now the third is the problem I think with avoidance is that it teaches you that the danger and power is outside of you. I can't do back squats because back squats are dumb. They're dangerous, they're bad. Every time I touch a barbell, I get hurt. Why? Because these exercises are not safe. I can't sit in that chair because that chair is way too soft. I need a better chair that supports my spine's curvature. I can't sleep on a plush mattress. I need a firm mattress because they're better for backs. This is the psychology of someone who's been in chronic back pain for at least 2 years. You start to see the world as a threat, and you don't realize the biggest danger is you. Your low back is the liability, not the chair. Not the insoles you put in your shoe, not the back support you're wearing a brace. There's nothing dangerous about lifting, sports, or anything. If you decide it is because you're going to live the life that matches that. Now, if you decide the biggest danger and power is my spine itself, my spine is too unsafe to handle things around me in my environment. That's a whole flip where you have accountability, but you also have the ownership of power or danger. So on the evidence side, danger and the power is you. There's no way to better guarantee that a problem becomes persistent than thinking that it's happening to you. When it's a problem in your body. I'm not saying you can control, the life's realities of whatever else stuff. This isn't meant to be a philosophical talk. But at least with chronic breakdown of a tissue that shows the less you do, the more you break down, the more careful you are and avoidant, things speed up aging and decay. Well, then we better flip it and decide it's on me. Am I going to build over the next 2 years or am I not? Am I going to keep blaming the trigger, the straw that broke the camel's back, the deadlift that broke the camel's back? I slept wrong, I traveled too much. All these will flare you up for sure. The danger is you. You're the liability. So it's not meant to just be a harsh accountability talk. It's a reframe for the people that actually are living in fear more than even pain. The worst part of pain isn't that it hurts. It's that you begin to expect it if it's chronic, and then you live with this idea that everything's out to get you. That's called fear. Your body will follow that, and it will reflect that to you. A fearful body is a tense body. It's one that's avoidant. It's one that's oversensitive. It's one that goes into something that feels new, and it goes, oh, okay, hold on, wait, and you spasm. So on the intro of this video, I showed an old reel where I took flexion fears, and then I took extension fears. And I showed the journey on a just very simple thought process, reverse engineering levels, graded exposure. And so the journey of flexion could be elephant walks down to lower amounts, supported flexion, you're not weight bearing, you're not shearing your spine with a lot of load, but you are getting the tissue to that length, and then you are moving legs, I do both at a time, simply to increase the nerve tension. Your nerves are stretched here, they're relaxed here, until you can get to where basically you should have full confidence by the time you get close to the ground. What is picking up something? It's just another rep. It's a day in the office, a day in the gym that you've prepared for. You've done that. There's no worries there. The opposite of extension that I showed, I actually think would start with the back extension iso holds. So before we do something like a seated good morning and hinging, we should have the tolerance to have our back at lockout here with the glutes helping, not stretched. Once you can get to 2 minutes on the holds, going further to something like a seated good morning, it's just combining your flat back strength with your hip mobility. So this little journey, this is not the right bench height, and this is not the way I would get into it. But with a flat back, just moving your shoulders in front of the hips. Every inch in life that your shoulders get in front of your hips, you're using your low back, just in general. Also stretching out the hips. This is a position that really, if you strength train this and get your hips opened up enough with your back working, and tolerance to sitting just tends to feel so much better. The idea of posture, at least on the inactive, thoughtless side. I'm not talking about thinking about being perfect posture, but literally your body isn't stuck here. The opposite, a seated good morning really does help prepare tissue for that side of life, sitting. But I just want to make one preface that as soon as we use absolute statements, you're guaranteeing that you're wrong sometimes. And I use a lot of absolute statements, so I'm wrong a lot of times. But within the obvious exceptions of a recent flare-up, a recent disc injury last week, don't jump into Jefferson curls. You just had surgery last month. Probably don't see how many back extension reps you could do. Start slower. These are nuances that I don't make enough attention for when I make these videos, but I do want to clarify, it's really always one direction or the other. Avoiding, you're fearful, or evidence, you have faith that the work will build you back up to where you need to be. It's always one direction or the other. The speed and the starting point is highly individual. There is no perfect blueprint I could give because we're going to all be starting at very different points of climbing this back mountain. Some of us are in a ditch and we can barely walk. You shouldn't start with seated good mornings. Some of us can do back extension reps day one without any tolerance issue, any nerve issue. Build the strength. They're on base camp 3. We're all climbing up to a stronger back, a more flexible, insensitive back, and then we're also seeing there's levels above, there's levels below. It's our own journey. So even if I show something that doesn't quite make sense to where you're at, just look for the general concepts. What am I afraid of for my back? Where have I hurt myself? And what have I started to blame around me? That's a really good set of clues of where you should exactly look to build. Where you should really try to think, what sensitivity is that? What tissue could be weak? What exercise carries over? And then how do I make it so easy that today's session I can't lose? Your session today, truly, day one of fixing my back for the long game. Back extension iso hold, high, really high pad. Put it on your stomach. Again, shoulders in front of the hips. I'm loading the back. It's to my chest. I'm using some of the back muscles. I can even hold on. 30 seconds. You can get off. Go to your flexion position you feel sensitive about. Sit here. All you do, squeeze the quads. 30 seconds. You could do little small movements if you wanted, but you could also just sit here 30 seconds. And then go here. Work on something like a split squat hold that I've shown. Pulling the psoas to the front of the spine. You are actually directly pulling your spine forward and building tolerance that way. 30 seconds each side. That is a session. That is enough to make yourself better next week than this week. So avoidance versus evidence. This is more of a nuanced post. There's so many ways to build your back if you take it slow enough. Just make sure you make the right decision on your mentality and what your 2-year plan is going to be like. Are you going to try to get lucky, or are you going to put stacks of evidence week after week, month after month?